Hey friends, it's Pastor Michael here with my better half. Our hope is that you'll find laughter, joy, and inspiration through some of our zany family stories. What went from 85 to 60?
My car.
We're recording a podcast and you're shopping on Kohl's.
Did you record it already?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You didn't tell me.
Well, I also didn't realize I needed to inform you that we weren't shopping right now. I mean, we're sitting at a table with our headphones on. I just assumed we were on the same page.
Wow, I got to get this done while I'm thinking about it.
Otherwise, you'll forget.
Yeah.
All right. Here's our question for tonight.
Oh, okay.
Who is someone you admire and would you want to trade places with them for a day?
And would I?
Yeah. Would you want to trade places with them for a day?
Who do I admire?
Yeah. Someone you admire and would you want to trade places with them for a day?
Oh, this lady that I follow on Instagram.
It's not your news lady, is it?
No.
Okay.
Oh, no. Her name's Felicia Masonheimer, and she is a Bible teacher, I think is what she calls herself. I deeply admire her. I don't know that I'd want to trade places with her for a day.
Okay.
She does a lot.
Mine is much less bizarre. I don't know. Maybe mine's weirder than yours. I don't know. Mine is actually somebody that we both know. It's Chase. I don't know why, but I've always admired him. I think every time, and I tell Sid this all the time, and they make fun of me for it, but every time I watch them do something, I'm like, man, he is just like, he's such a good guy. He's such a down-to-earth person. I can't say enough good things about him, but no, I would not want to trade places with him for a day. No, the job that he does is far more physical than any job I want to do. So, yeah, that was an easy one.
Yeah.
Okay, so tonight's topic is a little bit out there in our world, in our life, but it's been real the past couple of days. Well, really the last week. So the quest to co-parent. Now, I don't know that in the original episode, if we told anybody, because we talk about having 5 kids, because all 5 kids are our kids as far as we're concerned, but Aaron and Aiden are mine from a previous relationship, and so they are not your biological children, but they have always been our boys. Like when we talk about them, you don't very often say your 2 stepsons. You say our 5 kids,
Right.
our 4 boys, whatever the case may be. But in the more recent years, it has become a lot easier to navigate that co-parenting, but it wasn't always like that. It wasn't easy at first. So I want to preface this conversation by saying I was young when I had Aaron and Aiden, didn't necessarily have life figured out. Their mom didn't necessarily have life figured out. We didn't know what it meant to raise children together in separate households. And so, frankly, I think the boys paid the price for that to some degree. I don't think it's like we didn't do everything terrible. We didn't screw them up so bad that they won't be able to function. But I mean, we caused a little bit of damage in what we've done and how we've raised them. But I think it's gotten better.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
So we kind of said, look, when you and I first started dating, we were living in Newark. Well, not when we first started dating, when we got married. We were living in Newark. And so it was an hour and a half one way to see the boys every other weekend. Now, we had a midweek visit that we did not exercise, that we let my parents take so that they would get to spend time with my parents. But on Friday night, we would drive an hour and a half to pick them up and then drive immediately an hour and a half back home, spend that evening, which got home pretty late. By the time it's there, it was just about bedtime. Saturday together, Sunday part of the day, and then drive back up. And whether that was going to visit my parents first or take them home or whatever, but it was made for a long time. But I think the reason that I wanted to cover the topic and I wanted to talk about it is because I think people who, first of all, let's put it this way, people will say that the boys come from a broken home or a broken family. That's not the case at all. They are loved by 4 parents instead of 2 parents. It is very different.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that all situations are like that or not, that your situation is different, but there is something to say about this isn't we're not battling each other on how the boys are raised or what they should do, what they shouldn't do. We're very much so aware of they are their own people, and we have to be respectful of that. But growing up, we struggled with the back and forth. The rules are different at our house than they are at mom's house, or we don't want to go there because the drive is so long, or, whatever the case may be. And that's hard. But we had to realize, too, that we have to do what's best for the boys. And sometimes that's saying, yeah, I know you don't want to, but you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you don't want to ride in the car for an hour and a half, but you have to ride in the car for an hour and a half. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Multiple court cases, in court and out of court for different things, lots of different times. Let's see. The big one was, child support was even a mess for us to begin with. I was paying cash at first to her. They were keeping receipts. Child support never got it. And it's at the point now where they still don't really have it. They still don't really have it figured out. But and so it's another thing that you have to navigate when you're co-parenting if there's a child support order in place. But one of the things that I struggle with even today is that I feel like we have always been kind of the second house. We're not the primary residence. We're not I hate to say favored household, but we are not. And so that's been hard for me because we've tried to do everything for the boys, but you can't always get it right.
And I think that's just natural because it can't be the favored house when you're there 6 days a month. You know what I'm saying? I think that's just natural to didn't feel like home.
Yeah. And even when they had their own bedroom and all of their things were there, it was still, they were only there every other weekend.
Yeah. I'm sure to them it probably felt like they were visiting.
Yes.
Not
living.
Home.
This wasn't their house. This wasn't their bedroom. This wasn't their space. They were there visiting.
Yeah.
And as they've gotten older, that has changed quite a bit too, because when Aiden turned 14, they then had the decision to where they were going to spend their time. Mm-hmm. And while our order says that they have to spend 10 waking hours with both parents, at least 10 waking hours a week with each parent, we don't get that typically. Typically, we're in the every other weekend, if we're lucky, maybe once a month, which is hard. But we also understand that we're 20 minutes away from their friends. It's not like we're right down the street and their friends can come hang out at our house or whatever. Neither of them are driving, so they can't back and forth on their own. Yeah. It requires some organization and some transport and whatnot. So, but I think what's made that so hard for me is that, again, we want to do things with them. And so this is what I'm saying this. So if you're in this boat, don't feel guilty. We want to do things with them, but we always feel like when they're here, we have to entertain them.
Yeah.
Our kids entertain themselves by going outside and playing or playing with each other, or they have neighbor kids that they play with, whatever. But the two big boys don't have that because they don't have the same roots here, the same connections here. Yeah. And so we feel like we always have to entertain them. And when we can't, we just have to be okay with not being able to entertain them.
Yeah.
And just saying hey, this is life. You're not always going to have something going on. And this past weekend has been nice. Saturday, we had lots of plans. We stayed super busy. Mm-hmm. But then today I noticed that, they spent a lot of time in their own space and they were, we didn't
out of the house,
solid out of the house plans where we were forced to all be together. And I'll also say that as they're growing up, cell phones and, all of those things become more and more they have it more.
Yeah.
They both have cell phones and they're always with them. So it makes it a little more challenging to get one-on-one time. But it is hard to always feel like the parent who's trying so hard but can't seem to gain any I don't want to say favor because it's not what I mean, but I guess that's the only way I can think of. In my brain, that's how it. if I can't get them to spend time with me, then how do I gain favor with them? How do I? There are things that I want to teach them that I can't teach them. I can't even gain really their respect at this point. It's much more challenging to do that. Co-parenting is the hardest, but I think the best piece of advice that I can give is don't let the courts co-parent for you.
Yeah. You have to, have a relationship to some extent.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be able to communicate.
Yeah. Well,
and
her and I will always have a part in each other's lives. Whether we both consider that unfortunate or fortunate, you know what I mean? Like, it's always going to be there.
Right. Well, and the sooner that you realize that.
Yes.
And are able to move past, like, you're not in a dating relationship, you're not in a marriage, but you're still in a relationship that you have to be able to be okay with. You don't have to be best friends. You don't got to love them, but you need to have respect and.
Yeah. I don't have to, I have to be able to look at her and say, okay, her life is her life, my life is my life. And they're very different. We have very different standards for what we want to do with our lives and, what we expect for our lives and what we expect from other people around us.
Yeah.
There are certain things in our lives that we don't tolerate that she will tolerate, and there's certain things in her life that she won't tolerate that we will tolerate. So
yeah, and you can't just say well, you're doing it wrong.
Correct.
And you have to, and it's hard to navigate, but when they come from different households and different rules, it's really hard to navigate. Like, if they're allowed to do this at mom's, but you're not allowed to do this at dad's, then they feel like they're being hounded all the time here. And it's, it's just the worst. And, and vice versa. And you can't say oh, you're doing it wrong. You can't let them do that because that's their set of rules. You just have to kind of work around it, be more lenient. And
here our kids...
not with all things, but...
Yeah, well, our kids are only allowed to have video games after dinner typically here unless we have given them permission otherwise. And that's a tablet, an iPad... Switch, Xbox, whatever it may be. They're only allowed typically to have that after dinner. But at Aiden, he likes to play NBA 2K.
Yeah.
And so middle of the day, he'll just plop a chair in the middle of the living room and start playing. And it's no big deal to him because at his mom's house, that's okay. So usually I'll let him finish his game. Then I'm like, all right, it's time to turn it off. We're not going to do that anymore. And usually he doesn't push back a whole lot, but I'm sure to him, it's well, that's dumb.
You're right.
Because, at mom's house, I could play all day if I wanted to.
Yeah.
So, we also, every Sunday, we're at church. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're bored or not. That's what we're doing on Sunday. So that's another probably pretty big challenge for them to have to get used to because they don't go to, kids ministry. So they have to sit in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
So they're there for worship. They're there for service. So it's probably a lot for them. Yeah, I can't look at her relationship and say, or her marriage and say, oh, well, that's nothing like what we've got, because it's not, but no relationship is. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody is quite as enthusiastic about their marriage as we are. The look on your face was pretty priceless. I wish everybody could have seen that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, buddy. Well, and I was talking about Sid and Chase, and they're so private about everything that they do. They didn't do a big gender reveal. They didn't do all of those things. And I think that plays into how you raise your children, the way that you look at things. We realized very early on that birthday parties were not a thing for us. It was a lot of stress. It was there was this hyped up experience that you were expecting and you could never reach that. And so, we changed what we do. So now we do birthday table where the kids, when they get up in the morning, they have their cinnamon rolls in the shape of their age and there's balloons on the floor and their presents are there. And then they have a limited yes day. They get to decide where we eat dinner or lunch. They get to decide what activity we're going to do for the day, whether that's, Sky Zone or, Urban Air or Sluggers and Putters, whatever they may decide, they have that ability to do that. And, when you co-parent, we don't always have the boys on their birthday.
Yeah.
Or they're not here in the morning for birthday table. So those are adjustments that we've had to make. Yeah. And those are the hard ones. Those are the ones that I struggle with because on Father's Day, I don't want to take away from their stepdad, but at the same time, I'm like, darn it, I want to spend time with my kids. And it's not fair that I shouldn't get to. Yeah. So it's a challenge. And when I say it's not fair, I don't mean oh, they won't let me. I'm saying I want my kids to be able to do what they want to do, but at the same time, I also want to be able to have a relationship with them. And so sometimes it's that hard saying, no, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to be here for that. Yeah. This is important to us. What else you got?
I don't know.
I think important part is too, when I said, like, don't let the courts co-parent for you, you have to advocate for your kids and what you know is right, which is not easy. Mm-hmm. Like, there are times when, we would end up in court and we would feel like it was a constant loss for us. Like, everything we would do was just, it felt like it was dragging on forever and we couldn't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we were counting on the court system to do what was right. But really, I mean, it was us finding the right attorney and like making sure that everything was where it needed to be. And it wasn't us like trying to set up the system. I mean, at the time, she had filed to terminate visitation, like to cut out visitation altogether. And immediately, as soon as I opened that paperwork, I had a meltdown because I'm like, I'm never going to see my kids again. Like, that was my thought.
Yeah.
And there was really, when I took it to the attorney, he's like, there's no basis for this. Like, don't stress about it, which is easier said than done, by the way. The attorney who's been through this a million times can see that. The guy on the other side of the table who thinks he's never going to see his kids again can't. And so I kind of went into meltdown mode. And even every time we would go to court, there was still this side of me that was just stressed out about everything that was happening. But at the end of the day, it all worked out, which was what allowed us to have a shared parenting arrangement, which was the 4 on, 4 off, 3 on, 3 off, which is now standard visitation in Ohio. And it's not like we didn't just get standard visitation. We got a lot of stuff that we had really wanted for a long time. We, split all of the transportation because at the time we were doing all of it. And I don't say any of that to make it sound like we were the martyrs. Like, we had offered to do so much of that because we were so far away. And the closer we got, that felt like the harder for us to see the boys.
Yeah.
We moved home and we still only got every other weekend, even though they were 2 blocks away from us at any given time. And they were still too young to like ride their bike to our house and whatnot. Yeah. So those were challenges all in their own. But don't let the courts co-parent, but always advocate for what you think is best for your kids. And sometimes it is the court deciding what's best through a guardian ad litem or whatever the case may be. And then I will also say this, that it's not always possible to co-parent. Sometimes there are people you can't co-parent with who don't want to necessarily be part of a child's life. If you have somebody who wants to be part of your child's life, be thankful for that, because not everybody is that way.
Yeah.
But our boys have always known that, like, they're welcome here. It doesn't matter, morning, noon, or night, they can come here. That's not easy, but they're always welcome here. There's always a place for them here. And, right now, because they're only here whenever they want to be, they don't have their own bedrooms. They've both got their own separate beds, and they have private space to sleep, and they have their own clothes here, and they have their things. But as far as like tangible, like, they don't have shelves with toys on it, because they've obviously both grown out of that. But they don't have a computer here and a computer at mom's, because there's just no need for that if they're only here every once in a while. But that doesn't make me a bad parent, and that's been really hard to process too, because you feel like I should always have a bedroom for them that gets slept in once a month if I'm lucky. Yeah. So it's more to it than that. So don't be hard on yourself whenever you feel like you're doing your best, and then you can be made to feel like it's not good enough because they don't have everything your other kids have. I think that's been a challenge for me too.
Yeah.
We talk about vacations.
Yeah.
I only see my kids once a month if I'm lucky, and again, like, sometimes it's more than that. But if I decide to take a trip to Florida, do I invite them or don't I? Because if I say, hey, I want you guys to come, well, you don't want to come any other time, so why would you want to come to this? Like, that's been a challenge for me. But at the same time, I mean, they're my kids, so I want them to go. I want to be on vacation with them. I want to spend time with them. And sometimes you just have to coerce them into going by saying, hey, we're going to the beach. You get an extra couple of hours in the car, the time on the beach. Although I'm useless on the beach. I just sleep.
Yeah.
And burn. Co-parenting has probably been, for you and I, the biggest challenge of raising kids.
Yeah.
Our 3, easy peasy lemon squeezy. The 2 big boys, it's a lot harder because we're trying to navigate their life at mom's versus their life at dad's.
Yeah.
Making sure that they give you the same respect they give their mom, making sure they give their stepdad the same respect that they give to me. Like, all of those things are very challenging. Very challenging. But in the end, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
Like they're going to grow up to be functioning members of society who have had the opportunity to watch 4 people, not just 4 people, but the 4 of us as parents, and then my mom and dad as grandparents. Mm-hmm. Love them, take care of them, make sure that they have everything that they need, and then hopefully they will be able to model their lives out of some of that to some degree. Hopefully they can pick all the good things and not all the bad things.
Yeah. That's the hope.
Yeah. And there are a lot of bad things, it never fails that, their mom and I end up in a heated conversation on the phone over a technicality in the custody agreement, and we don't allow the boys to play us against one another, which is, again, probably another very important point. When her and I talk on the phone, I try to treat her with great respect, even if I don't believe in what she's saying, even if, not that I think she's lying, but when I'm like, what she's saying to me, I don't agree with, right? I don't attack her for that or tell her, well, that's just dumb. I'll tell her respectfully, like, hey, that's not how I would handle that. But that's a whole level of confusion that you can't even wrap your head around. And let's face it, when you have teenagers, they're not going to always tell you the truth. They're going to tell you what they think you want to hear in order to get to whatever the next phase is in life. And sometimes that's just to get you out of their face. It's not necessarily, I'm not lying to you to lie to you. I'm lying to you because I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
And the one thing that, when her and I talked on the phone just over this last situation was, like, we have to understand that a teenager is only going to say what they want to say in order to get where they want to get. It's not always going to be entirely truthful. Still sucks. Hurtful things come out in all of that, and I don't even know how to describe some of that pain. It is the worst feeling in the world to be a parent and think that your kids don't want anything to do with you. It is an absolutely awful feeling.
I think that's teens in general too.
I agree, and I'm not trying to take away from anybody who isn't co-parenting, because I'm sure if you have kids, teenagers,
it's harder. It's easier to take offense when you're co-parenting,
and you don't get to spend that same level of time. Like when one of my kids say, "I hate you," or "I'm never coming back here," and then you don't see them for a month, you have to question: are they really never coming back? Like you find yourself asking yourself those questions more frequently, or this has always plagued me as a challenge. You don't see them for the whole month of November and half the month of December, and then all of a sudden the week of Christmas they want to show up at your house. You're like, well, I've gone all this time and not been able to see them, and now they're showing up because they want gifts. And we aren't big, like, Christmas is not a big holiday for us as far as like gift giving. Our kids get gifts, don't get me wrong, and they're not usually just like, oh, it's Tinker Toys. They usually get decent presents, but we don't go all out. We don't go into debt for Christmas.
Yeah.
We've stopped doing that many years ago too. But then you always feel like you have to do something big. It has to be grand in order for them to go, oh, Dad got me something cool. And again, we don't do this, but you feel like sometimes you have to outdo the other parent in order to be like the cool parent.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that I feel that way, because I don't think that that's what matters to them, or I like to think that's not what matters to them. But at the same time, they also know that that's how I am. So they're like, hey, Dad, by the way, I'd love to have a new gaming computer for Christmas. Mom said I couldn't have one. And then I'm like, well, yeah, let me see what I can do about that. It's silly things, but it is a challenge to keep them, what I feel like is keep them coming back. What does it take to entertain them, to make them feel welcome and desire to be here? So, any other fun? We could go into very specifics.
Let's not.
I was going to say it wouldn't be a good idea, but we could. We've just seen so much in co-parenting these boys. So much stuff.
Yeah.
And not because we're right and they're wrong, or they're right and we're wrong. It's literally 2 teenage boys and who like have grown up in this co-parenting situation, who've learned how it works and kind of like what you can and can't do, what you can get away with, what you can't get away with. And I mean, that's just the truth.
They've learned.
And I don't think through
the years,
like to some degree, do they play us against one another? Probably, but I don't think it's ever been so epic that it's been super huge issue.
Yeah.
But we recognize things like problems in the parenting style very early on that we had to adjust to because there was no adjusting anywhere else. You know, you can't force them to adjust. So we would have to make changes ourselves in order to make it feel right for them. But then is it compromising how we would raise our kids? You know what I mean? Like, just like the video game thing, we wouldn't let our kids do that, but we have to make that adjustment. So I don't think I have any other crazy thoughts. I want to reiterate that you cannot expect the court to co-parent for you. You can't expect a custody agreement to solve all of the problems, because you can have everything written on paper and think it is perfect, but it doesn't make up for the relationship that you form with any of them.
Yeah.
You can have the most perfect custody agreement and your kids still don't want to spend time with you, or you can have the worst custody agreement and your kids think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It truly doesn't matter, and you have to be able to look at that agreement as this is a starting point for what the court thinks we should be doing. How can we make this better for the boys? How can we make this better for the kids? How can we expound on this and not compromise its integrity? There are some non-negotiables in here, but some of this is definitely negotiable. Ours says 4 on, 3 off, or 4 on, 4 off, 3 on, 3 off. At least 10 waking hours, even after the age of 14. We don't force them to that. We allow them to make those decisions. And would we be happy if they did 10 waking hours every week? Yeah, that'd be great. But then you look at what does that cost them in their social circles and how they're trying to adapt to the lifestyle that they're going to have whenever we're not around, whenever they're 18 and trying to figure out life on their own. So, yeah, it should just be a starting point. It should never be the full answer. And you have to be willing to talk to the other person. And if you're not, you're never going to be successful. That's the hardest part. When my phone rings and I see her name, I'm like, something's going sideways. Like, I brace myself for the storm. And it's not, like, I'm not doing it because, oh gosh, here she is calling again. It's because typically if her and I are on the phone together, there's a problem.
Yeah.
There's something that's happened, whether it's with one of the boys at her house or something that they've said about something that's happened at my house or whatever. So you're just bracing yourself, but you just have to learn to talk through that and talk with respect. And if you can't do that, like for a while, her and I couldn't do that.
Right.
So she had your number. It was just easier that way. Like, make arrangements with you and just say, hey, we're going to get the boys at this time. Now I can say, hey, can we pick the boys up an hour early? And she's like, yeah, let me just check and make sure they're both here. It's, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Life is so much different now, but we're also incredibly respectful of their time and what they do together. And she is, for the most part, with our time and what we do here too. Mm-hmm. So, okay. I don't think I have anything else.
I don't.
All right. Well, that's it. There's another one for the books.